Some coaches at Oklahoma University think they have the right to punish their players for holding the wrong political views. Boomer sooner, indeed. I'm Dr. Duke, she's Katie, and this is The Dr. Duke Show. Hello, everyone, and welcome to The Dr. Duke Show, the only program that keeps you educated on the craziness impacting K-12 classrooms and college campuses around the world. Today's show is sponsored by Mike Lindell and our friends at MyPillow. Save up to 66% at MyPillow.com when you use the code Dr. Duke. That's DRDUKE. Support us by supporting MyPillow, which in turn will support you in your support of us. Today we start at the University of Oklahoma, where a legal motion has been filed against two coaches that claim they have the right to discipline players for their political beliefs. Now, this is a remarkable story. You had one of the stars of the volleyball team who had some views that were slightly different than the rest of the team. Let's call them non-politically correct views. Nothing insulting, just not your mainstream, typical progressive worldview. These two coaches discriminated against the player on the basis of that and claimed that they had the right to discriminate against those worldviews because of team cohesiveness. In fact, this actually went into the courts. And in the courts, they are making the claim that coaches have the right to discriminate against particularly conservative viewpoints as coaches for the benefit of the team. This is pretty stunningly ballsy. Volleyballsy,
if you will.
Yes,
we are talking specifically about the now former Sooner setter, Kylie McLaughlin, and she's not just a good player. She is a D1 All Big 12 player. She was team captain, and because she basically isn't
woke.
Okay, well, I was going to make a volleyball comment, but fine, we'll just go with it. She was basically taken aside by the coaches. And the head coach is Lindsey Gray Walton, and the assistant coach is Kyle Walton, who I didn't look into it, but let's assume they're probably married. I don't think it's a mother-son relationship. But anyway, Kylie was told that, you can't say these things that you're saying, and we don't approve of it. And it's not like it's wrong, but it just doesn't go align with the culture here at the Sooner. And being a D1 volleyball team, what are some of the things they do to, bring home this cohesiveness on the team? Well, apparently, according at least to Kylie and what Kylie said, as a team, last June, they watched the Netflix documentary 13th, which is all about mass incarceration of African Americans. And then they had a team discussion. How that brings team cohesiveness to a volleyball team, we don't know.
What does it have to do with volleyball?
Well, it doesn't. But McLaughlin then said, because team discussion, she agreed 100% that slavery was wrong. She found the film to be slanted left and to speak ill of then, at the time, U.S. President Donald Trump. And so that was, bad. You can't.
Don't
say anything about Trump. You just can't. And so she was told, after she also tweeted about the University of Texas, their student athlete's desire to abandon the school's Eyes of Texas fight song due to its racial undertones. She tweeted out a post that had a skull and a crossbones emoji, and it had another emoji of a laughing clown. Okay, so it's all the emojis. That was also bad. So that's another instance of her.
Two emojis is
also
enough to make the team discipline her. And so all of this kind of led up, and she was told by the coach, saying, you need to take that down. You're not supposed to be, doing any of this. She actually got a call, and they talked about, the coach and Kylie talked about it, and she said she was, sorry about kind of like her feelings on that, but Kylie also didn't do any actions. She didn't do anything to. So let me see if I understand this.
Proceeding to her being.
The coaches can hijack their volleyball team.
Yes.
To propagandize them with anti-Trump movies.
Correct.
But when the student athlete responds mildly with a couple of emojis suggesting this is kind of BS, the full weight of the athletic department comes down.
Yes. So the two different instances that she was involved in, made it so she must be basically shunned from the team. And in that conversation that was over an hour long with the coach, she actually was told, McLaughlin was told by the coach, that I can't save you when you get into the real world when you leave here. And all this information is only coming out because there's a lawsuit that Kylie put.
So I'm going to cancel you because you might get canceled in the real world. I'm going to teach you a lesson, right? I can't fix you. I can't save you when you get canceled by your employer one day. So I'm going to cancel you from our team.
And basically she was branded a racist and a homophobe by her teammates and of course the coaches. And after just all the different meetings that they had, she was given the choice because again, they think she's a racist, that she can either transfer, keep her scholarship, but as just a student at Oklahoma, or she could redshirt the season and practice separately without her teammates throughout the year. So shun her.
Yeah, I mean, what incredible gall,
and
right?
she was team captain.
And the best player on
the best
team.
player all conference.
Right.
But because it's her political views, which aren't being done on the court, it's not like she's sitting there talking like she sets,
she
set spikes.
She said nothing that is palpably racist. She just questioned the ethos of all of this political correctness. And for that, you could keep your scholarship, but not play the sport we recruited you to play. I don't see how they possibly can win this in court.
I don't know. Well, we're going to see. But we know they didn't win it on the court.
Nope.
This year they went 4-14. Bump, set, spike.
Bump, set, spike.
Ace. Well, we have a medical student who is no longer a medical student, and it's all because he is pro-life. Think about that one. So the story goes, Austin Clark was a fourth-year medical student at the University of Louisville, and he was set to graduate May 2021. He's married, he has a baby on the way, and he has a handicapped son. While Austin was preparing to begin his career as a doctor to help his family and his future patients. But the medical school decided to cut those dreams short by formally dismissing him on July 15th, 2020, according to a new lawsuit that was just recently filed, and that's why we're finding out about this now. Now, according to the complaint against President Neely Benapudi of the University of Louisville Medical School of Medicine, along with 13 others who were connected to the school, Clark is alleging that the trouble with the school began when his pro-life group hosted speaker Alex McFarland in fall of 2018. So this man who's been going through medical school, going through the rotations, doing everything he needs to get his license, has been doing this all in the wake with all this in the background. So for years he's done this. This goes back to fall 2018.
So again, as with the previous story, you have somebody who's highly qualified, who's doing everything they're supposed to do athletically or academically, but because they have a view that the medical school or the coaches don't like, they are literally canceled from their degree, canceled from their ability to play the sport. And nobody thinks this is a problem at Louisville.
Oh, no. Because Clark had been on the leadership board of the Medical Students for Life group at the University of Louisville School of Medicine, and the administration did everything they could to prevent an actual event that they had from happening. And it was largely by mandating impossibly expensive security fees, claiming, if you have any sort of a pro-life event, obviously you need big security fees.
So it's interesting, isn't it, how much it costs to protect people watching an anti-abortion program and how easy it is to murder a baby. Isn't it?
Stop and think for a moment on that one. Now, the student group actually had to get the Alliance Defending Freedom involved. It's a legal foundation committed to free speech of conservative students, in case you haven't heard of them. We talk about them all the time. They had to make sure that the event was able even to take place. So you had to get an outside group, a legal firm, to be able to make it so that you can have just a simple event. Not like you're killing babies. You're the ones not doing that, but either way. Now, according to Clark, he says that from that point of that event until his 2020 dismissal from the medical school, professors retaliated against him for his views, calling him stupid and questioning if his, quote, brain was working, among derogatory comments made. He was subjected to abuse, changes to his grades, and forced to sign a professionalism contract that other students had not been required to sign. I thought we weren't allowed to do things like that, where you make it different from one student to the next.
You literally have to
sure that's not allowed.
Sign a document repudiating your free speech.
Contract.
Yeah.
And then in the lawsuit that he now has filed, he alleges that he was physically harassed and bullied. And the lawsuit also states that Defendants punished Clark for expressing his views regarding the proper treatment of medical students, abortion and the sanctity of life, and the application of Christianity and his personal philosophy and beliefs to the practice of medicine when there are students who, when expressing contrary views or faiths, or lack thereof, via student organization and other means, or otherwise engage in similar or more severe unprofessional behavior, while both on and off the clerkship services, are not subject to the same or similar restrictions or such severe level of academic discipline as applied to Clark. So they have been basically bullying him, tormenting him, harassing him.
And then dismissing it.
And then ultimately, they said, poof, goodbye.
So that's my question. What changed? I mean, obviously he's defending himself, but he didn't have any more on-campus rallies. Why after everything else they had done to him, why did they decide finally in July to get rid of him?
No, so basically they've been harassing him all this time, and then they're claiming there was a doctor that he worked with who said that during his rotations he was calling around and basically blackballing him to all the other places that he could do like rotations at and that, saying how bad of a student he was. And so then it reflected in his grades, it reflected in everything he was doing, so they saw an opportunity and did it. Now what's interesting is there are calls for an investigation at the university, at the School of Medicine, for improper ties to the nearby abortion facility.
Oh, jeez.
EMW Women's Surgical Center, it's called. Its court records show has an official connection to the medical school, an official connection. And it's according to reports, Dr. Ernest Marshall.
There he is.
Yep. Kermit Gosnell number 2. Looks just like him.
Jr.
He owns the EMW abortion vendor. He's also a teacher with the University of Louisville School of Medicine for nearly 4 decades. The leading abortion provider, right there, all smiles, is also a teacher for nearly 4 decades at the same medical school. And don't forget, he did just do a GoFundMe last year to fix his abortion clinic, because you need more reproductive freedom fund, as they say. And they raised $186,000, which is more than they even wanted, because let's just throw money to kill babies.
And of course, you have in both of these first 2 stories, and I think we're going to see more of this moving forward, the default position of universities now is we're going to discriminate you for your conservative views and worry about legal consequences and the Constitution afterwards. This is a dangerous, dangerous situation now where even though they know they're probably not going to win in court, even though they know that this is rank discrimination, they just don't care. And that should make you, if you're thinking about sending your kids to these colleges, that should make you very, very nervous.
Well, and the thing is, it's not even like they understand how lazy a society we are. We'll just take it and roll over. So they're going to be like, sure, call your bluff, basically. They're going to say, yeah, take us to court. You actually have to take them to court, though. That's the thing. And instead, too often, it's too much money. It'll take time. Or, and instead of fighting and facts be damned, whatever happens,
surrender.
You just roll over. And that's where we're at. And if we don't actually stand up, knowing dang well that, yes, we could still lose it in court, if we don't call them out on their BS, they're just going to keep doing it to us.
It seems to be very unlikely, though, that in a court, if you have anything like a balanced judge, and that's the question, I don't see constitutionally how either of these people can lose their cases.
Well, they absolutely shouldn't be able to, but it's still kind of funny to me for all the same people who are saying how bad the system is and how the institutions are so bad. They're kind of relying on the institution to back them, even though we know that if you fight this, you should win and they should fall. They're claiming racism in the institutions and all that, and yet they're going to go and take advantage of the institutions and try and make it hell for you. Now, as we've learned over these past couple years, if you have a teacher who sees a child who is showing persistent signs of gender confusion, what you should do is make sure you do not tell the parents about it. That's what you're supposed to do. At least you're supposed to do that at the Jefferson County Public School District, which is the second largest school district in Colorado. Of course, it's kind of a burb-ish of Denver. So if it's anywhere near a big city, it's probably gotten some of the grossness from that big city. And so they decided to send out a toolkit for supporting transgender and gender-expansive / non-conforming students to their teachers. In this toolkit, we've shown it before. It includes the The special picture that is the gender unicorn. Every time we see that thing, it's like Barney, 10 times worse.
Yes.
Now, the gender unicorn, it claims there's a difference between gender identity, gender expression, sex assigned at birth, and whom people are both physically and emotionally attracted to. Because that's where we are. And so this got sent out to our teachers, or the teachers, I guess, in Colorado, for a toolkit so you can support the transgender and gender expansive / non-conforming students. Again, we've showed this unicorn I don't know how many times. Many. And according to school guidance, if a child in secondary school uses a different name, a different gender, or is using different pronouns at school, teachers are not required to inform the parents. And according to the toolkit, elementary school teachers are told they must inform the parents about persistent gender dysphoria. But again, if they're over the age of 11, you don't have to.
Yeah, the guide reads, if school staff believe that a gender identity or expression issue is presenting itself and creating difficulty for the child at school, approaching parents and guardians about the issue is appropriate at the elementary level. Together, the family and school can then identify appropriate steps. But over than that, no. So again, as we've seen across the country, one of the defaults of these public schools is just don't tell. Just don't tell parents what the curriculum is. Deny them. We have a school board in North Carolina that advised its teachers to ignore white moms and dads when they protested. So they're not going to change. They're not going to apologize. They're going to ignore you. They're going to find ways to blow you off. And if you happen to be misfortunate enough to live in places like Loudoun, Virginia, they will dox you and try to get you fired for your jobs.
This is true. And we did a story this week in Atlanta about how a principal was trying to break students up, segregate them by race. But according to this, at least in Colorado, you need to reduce or eliminate the practice of segregating students by gender. So you can't break them by gender, but you can break them by race. Okay. Yeah. Sounds good. That makes sense. Yeah.
So
yeah. It's all about what we want when we want.
Well, and you know as well as I do, right? That makes sense. That common sense is a tool of white supremacy, right? Mm-hmm. So the only way you can fight white supremacy is having these double standards.
Yes. Now, according to this guide as well, it says in situations where students are segregated by gender, such as for health education classes, students should be included in the group that corresponds to their gender identity. So if you're a 5th grade student and you're a boy and you're like, I just feel like hanging out with the ladies today and going to learn all about periods. Well, I'm going to identify as a girl for the purpose of the next hour class while they talk about menstruating.
Ladies is classist, you know that, right?
How dare I?
How dare you?
I don't use that. I don't use you.
You? Oh,
I don't use I don't use you.
How
I
dare
use
them?
Rainbows and
How do they? How dare they?
How dare they? In the case of a school activity like, say, girls' chorus, the school should consider regrouping or naming the groups according to the voice part. The sopranos and the altos, the tenors, and the basses. Okay, rather than gender. If you're talking about kids, especially in junior high, you're going to have such a mix of voices in there. Where are you going? All the boys will be the sopranos, and I would definitely be an alto, maybe even call me a tenor, if you will. Jeez. So that's not gonna cause any harm or feeling of inadequacy to those junior high boys, not at all. But other guidance that they include here includes allowing a transgender student to use the restroom and locker room that corresponds with the student's gender identity consistently asserted at school. What if it's not consistently asserted, though? What if today I'm a boy and tomorrow I'm a girl and the next day I am that gender unicorn? Then where do I go to pee? That's the real question. And the answer to that question is it doesn't matter, right? It doesn't matter as long as we are not inhibiting in any way the delusions of young children. And good thing if we're going to do overnight camp, because transgender students will also be assigned to share overnight accommodations with other students that share the student's gender identity consistently asserted at school. And they're going to play in sports that match his or her, they wrote his or her gender identity. Again, let's define the terms. What do they all mean? And then what are your instructions about consistently and gender identity at school? What does that mean? What does it constitute meaning asserted, consistently asserted? What's consistently asserted mean? All that means is that some teacher saw something once that she's going to turn into an issue, right? Why is it she? How dare you?
Well,
How dare you?
She's can be he's too, can't they?
How dare you?
He, she's.
He, she.
It's that time again for some real education in our instant classic section. We are enjoying our week dedicated to the work of Peter Paul Rubens, one of the preeminent Baroque painters of the Netherlands, one of the great painters of Western culture. We've been looking at some of his classical work. Today, I'd like to introduce you to some of his Christian work. His most famous work, I would argue, is one of these paintings. It's called The Elevation of the Cross, or the raising of the cross. It's Jesus being hoisted up on the cross to begin the final act of his crucifixion and his sacrifice. And if you look at this is a triptych, right? We've mentioned this before. It is a tripod. It's a tripartite painting where you've got the two wings on either side, and then you've got the central passage, and those wings open up, and there's paintings or there's or statues or statuary or even other things like that underneath there. So it's very complicated work. And this is a particularly beautiful one. You can see there on the left the birth of the baby, some young women with children, babies like Christ used to be. It's almost like a commentary on nativities. And then on the right, you've got some other characteristics of men on horseback, tormenting, perhaps the driving of Christ to the cross. But there in the center, you have the main image there, and it's the elevation, the raising of the Christ. And you can see just the sweaty emphasis on stress. Everything is stress. That Christ being look at the muscular man who supports Christ by under the thighs, and the man at the bottom of the picture who's desperately trying to use his weight and his power to force that cross to stand upright. It's straining. It's sweat. You can hear the groans. You can smell the sweatiness of the workers here. And there's the body of Christ, which having marched all the way to Calvary, had carried the cross, had been buffeted, had been crowned with thorns, looks almost immaculately healthy and robust. The eyes of the Christ are fixated on the clouds above where his Father is. And all of this sweat, all of this struggle, all of this strife is completely counterbalanced and ultimately undercut by the relative serenity of Christ. It's a very different kind of crucifixion. It's one that does not emphasize blood and sweat and tears of the Christ, but you see those things in a large part on those who are trying to torment him. It's as if Jesus is above the fray. Jesus at his most vulnerable moment, that moment when he is finally hoisted and crucified, that would be the most suffering part of Jesus' life and his mission, seems to be almost a gift, seems to be almost another aspect of Christ's serenity. And so you see that bulwark of work around him. Really, it's quite a beautiful painting. And you can see all the Baroque images here, as we're going to see tomorrow in the descent, taking down the body of Christ, that the body of Christ itself is the center light. He is the light, right, of all of this. In the beginning was the light, and the darkness did not know the light. The light entered the world, and the darkness around him did not comprehend it. It's a running commentary on the opening chapter of God's Gospel. Christ is the source of light in that picture, and everything else is a very frustrated human effort of sin, of selfishness, of self-will, hoisting up the Savior who's come into the darkness to save them, in particularly, really a beautiful triptych. And when you open it up, if you ever get a chance to see this triptych open and expand upon, it really is quite lovely. And so we offer something very coherent and artistic for Peter Paul Rubens Week, and tomorrow will be our last day on him.
All right, those are the stories for today. If you have a question for us, please feel free to drop it into the mailbag by emailing askduke@fpeusa.org. And if you enjoy our content, please consider joining our Patriot Club. Your one-time $99 tax-deductible donation allows us to keep bringing you these stories every day. Simply visit patriotclub.us to get signed up. That's patriotclub.us. And as a little thank you, we will ship you our signature tumbler.
And that's going to do it for this show. For Freedom Project, I'm Dr. Duke, and she's Katie. Until next time, stay educated, my friends.